It's almost there.
Okay.
Okay, you're live.
Okay, I'm going to call this meeting of the Salem City Council Legislative Subcommittee to order. If you please call the roll. Well, we'll just identify ourselves. Chuck
Hoy.
Hannah.
Hoy.
Anderson.
Okay, we have a quorum, so we will go ahead, and the staff will be identified as they speak. And so we'll start off with our lobbyist, Justin Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, everybody. Nice to see you. I will be brief. I say it every time, but I'm going to be brief this time. We had a wonderful meeting with Representative Clem. We won't get into details on that, but most everybody on this call was on that. Thank you for joining. You know, meetings are few and far between in this virtual world, so thank you, Council, for making that happen. I wanted to go across some key session dates for everybody. First session deadline is today. Bills must be scheduled for a work session in their original chamber of origin, with exception, obviously, for those committees we know about: rules, finance, ways and means, etc. The next deadline is April 13th. The bills must have received a work session in that chamber of origin, with those same exceptions that I talked about earlier. And then the House is beginning daily floor sessions on Monday, March 22nd. They're either going to meet from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. and either 5:30 or 7 in the evening, depending on what those committee schedules are. And folks may have seen Minority Party did not suspend the rules, so they are reading all the bills on the House floor, which again is a tactic that you know, takes much more time. So if that's any indicator, I'll leave that to City Council to come up with their own conclusions on that. Sine Die is June 27th. My guess is we will not be in the building by then, but you know, I think we're a little behind on some of those projected dates when we could go back in the building. And then finally, House Bill 5042, which contains 2004 Speaker's bill with Navigation Center, came out of Full Ways and Means today. So
Great.
That's on its way. And I would imagine that's a little bit of a reaction also to some of those tactics I talked about earlier. So try to get some things out of Ways and Means so they don't get stuck. That's good news. And then finally, Mr. Mayor, I'll just comment a little bit of a personal comment. I think what we're seeing in this virtual session is a lot of speculation, both from my colleagues and from folks that are watching remotely the legislature. I think people throw things out, they see what sticks. It can't be verified instantaneously by anybody, whether it's us as lobbyists or whether it's legislators. I think in the words of Senator Puzanski earlier last week, this is cramping his style, and I would say it's cramping our style as well, because it's like a massive game of telephone. And by the time it gets back to you 8 times removed, we're having to say, wait a minute, I never said that. Who said that? Where'd you hear that from? It's that kind of stuff going on. So as you know, it's a crazy time with policy and these deadlines, but not being able to verify, be there in person, have those conversations, I think is, we're seeing it to prove to be very, very difficult. So with that, Mr. Mayor, that's my ledge update, my little personal gripe of the day. And otherwise, I think we're on a good track. And you're going to hear a lot from your staff today.
Great, thank you. Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got 3 questions, 2 about bills and 1 about a pill. Let's start with the pill first. What's the story with Neerman?
Councilor Anderson, I don't have a comment yet for Neerman, but we'll get you an answer.
Okay, thanks. Second one, 2 of them, I'm curious about the gun bill that we spoke about with Representative Clem last when we had the meeting, and also about the REACH building code bill. I wonder where both are. Thank you.
Real quick, Counselor Anderson, Reach Code's alive, scheduled for a work session. I'll check that out and get that to you before the end of the meeting, and I'll defer to the mayor or Courtney on this other question. RE gun.
Before you get there, I'd be happy to testify if you need me.
Yeah, in fact,
Yeah, I
we're
think
counting on you to.
We got you slated on that.
Yeah, good. The gun bills, where are we on those? What's the story? Did they get scheduled for work sessions? Are they alive and everything moving along?
Only 554 is still technically alive.
Okay,
Well,
that's Ginny Burdick's.
Correct.
Okay,
As we mentioned, as Justin was mentioning in his overview, today's a really key date. And so we're seeing just a flurry of work sessions and cancellations and all of that. So when we know more about what is remaining, we're going to bring that back, which I hope we can focus on everything that's left on at our April 2nd meeting. So that's the way we're trying to approach this. And as we've talked about, 554 does some of the things that the council has indicated an interest in doing with regard to gun laws, but it doesn't do everything. And so we just wanted to kind of wait it out, see what it's doing, and then come back to you on the 2nd of April and try to navigate how to move forward. So again, literally while we've been sitting here, Nikki emailed me and I got cancellation notices about a couple of the things that are on your list for today that we thought were moving when we put this agenda together. So that's going to be the theme of today.
yeah.
If you don't mind, I'd like to just take a moment to notice Councilor Gonzalez has joined us
Oh, great.
as alternate to the committee. And because Councilor Lewis was unavailable today, we've asked Councilor Gonzalez to join us.
Excellent. Good afternoon, Jose.
Hi, Mayor. Thanks, Courtney.
And just really quick, in case you missed it, Councilor Gonzalez, the funding for Salem's Navigation Center is now in House Bill 5042, and it's already had a conversation it's through Ways and Means. So just want to make sure that everybody's aware. We're tracking quite a lot, and that's giving us, I don't know, Justin, would you call that confidence or hope?
I think hope is a good way to look at it. I'm kind of superstitious, so it's moving along well in the process right now. And then Courtney, to close the loop on Councilor Anderson's last question, Reach Code is scheduled for a work committee only on March 24th. So you won't get a shot, Councilor, to testify there, but you certainly will on the Senate side, and we'll make sure to get that signed up for you and get that going. So thanks.
On the gun bills, Courtney, you said things the council does and doesn't want. The council's never voted on this. So I want you to be kind of cautious as you describe the council. Council has a whole batch of possibilities they're looking at.
Yes.
So I'd be cautious as you describe the council's point of view on this stuff.
Thank you for that. You're right. And when we know more about what's left, we'll bring all of that back at the next meeting.
Right.
Thank you. So if it's okay with you, we'd like to take a moment just to talk about the bills that are on the agenda for today. And I'll start with, again, that theme that everything's moving so quickly. This is what we knew had legs earlier in the week. So there are several bills that would increase funding and support for behavioral health, addiction recovery, other kinds of funding. And those are House Bill 2086, Senate Bill 680, and Senate Bill 67 and Senate Bill 69. Those appear to have been work sessions canceled, so may not be going, but it wouldn't hurt to just recognize that all of those do something to provide more potential for funding.
Did a vehicle in that area then survive to pick up the pieces? Will you be looking for that bill that we're going to see move?
Yes.
Assume they're going to drop all this, so.
Yes, and I think the council's already taken action in previous meetings about other potential for funding supports for the for the Sobering Center and for mobile crisis response. So there are other bills, and maybe that would be the best way to start when we get together on April 2nd, is just to review all of the bills that are still alive that we have positions active on, and then the bills that are still alive that you may wish to take a position on. Would that be a good way to start? Okay.
Yeah, I think that'd be helpful. I think also having Justin give us which bills are not just alive. That's still too big a list. It's which bills are going to move and which bills are going to carry with the most important policy issues we're following. This will
Yeah.
get confusing at a certain point. This starts to get a little goofy.
Yeah, we'll do.
Everybody's got a bill, and people will suggest there's a bill there, and there isn't. They're just an amendment. So you do that for us?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Nikki and I will be doing like a first phase session inventory, and we'll kind of keep an eye on not just every bill that's still alive, but vehicles and things that potentially could be moving.
Okay, great. And this, I think you're right, Courtney, I mean, to highlight that this is a huge issue area to us. I think just generally these mental health issues and mental health support bills and policy bills. So we're real excited about those and understanding what's the one we got to get our work going on is the.
So again, we took the lens of earlier in the week, which is already dated, which things were scheduled for work sessions and would we want to consider having a position ready? And so that's what's before you today. So
Okay.
House 2086 is still active, as we know, sitting here this moment. And what that does is asks OA, Oregon Health Authority, to design a statewide crisis system that includes that doesn't have any barriers to access.
Okay.
And so that's in your queue for today. Senate Bill 67 asks Oregon Health Authority again to report and make recommendations on regulatory or policy barriers to behavioral access. Senate Bill 69, assuming there's another work session scheduled today, which could happen. Senate Bill 69 is really focusing on providing more housing for those with substance abuse disorders. And Senate Bill 680 is really focusing on establishing more peer respite centers. And again, another opportunity for more support services in our community. So those four are before you today for now.
Yeah.
Issue.
So, but there we show a position of support in all of those, right?
Yes, we do. And that's consistent with the legislative policy statements. We just wanted to bring those again because the bill reference, sometimes we can include that bill reference in a support letter or testimony.
But that just to clarify, if I could, Mr. Mayor, that's
Yeah.
the staff's recommended position for us. We haven't actually taken that position yet.
That's correct.
Why don't we take those bills forward? And is that what you're saying, kind of moving, Councilor Hoy, is we'll take those to the council as a package of mental health bills with the kind of policy issues we want to support. And then, but alert the council. We don't know which bill or bills are going to actually have all of it in them. So these are the policy areas is that okay?
Yep.
Great. Okay. Does that make sense? So I package them up that way, actually. I just talk about mental health or whatever that broader term was, and then put those bills in underneath, show our position, or ask for them to support the position, and we're off and running. With the caveat, it could be a relating clause out there somewhere we haven't seen yet that we'll end up using. Who knows?
Excellent. Thank you for the feedback.
Okay.
The next section is dealing with behaviors in public spaces. And we've had conversations about these bills before. And we wanted to give you a little bit more information. We've done gotten some more intel on House Bill 3115, and we wanted to share that out with you today. It's important to note that, these things are probably going to be amended as they're moving, and we're not recommending a position right here, right now. We're still watching the bill as it develops, but we do want to give you an update. You had asked what this could mean in Salem if it goes forward. So I'm going to do a really, really, really high level, and then ask Mark to weigh in on any questions you may have.
And tell us in advance what our action is to be on these for Monday's council meeting. What do you want us to do or for the next?
Right now, we're recommending we just continue to watch 3115. We are not.
That's the only one of these bills, or are there other bills or?
There's also House Bill 2367, the right to rest. And for that one, we're recommending an oppose right now. But that's again for your conversation.
Also 3124, I think those all get kind of.
3124 deals with more storage, and that I was going to talk about after.
Okay, good.
So if I could just on 3115, generally the way we're approaching this is that it's as currently drafted, it's really broad in its reach and unclear in its scope. And we have some concerns about how that might lead to litigation, really, to define some of the terms that are in the bill as it stands today. And so we'd like to just continue watching. From last time we've talked about last session when we got together, we talked about how the ordinance just has to be on the local government's books. It doesn't have to be enforced. If it's just present, it's grounds for litigation. And we also noted that anyone has standing in these right now as the bill's authored. So public property is really broadly defined. It includes buildings and structures and all different kinds of property. And the way we're reading the reasonableness standard, it potentially could impact things that would be viewed to have a time, place, or a manner impact that may seemingly be unrelated. So for example, we have an ordinance that closes parks at sundown. That could be something that could get caught up in this. And so that's really where our concern is needing more, needing some of the reach to be more and the clarity in the scope to be a little bit tighter. So that's where we're just going to continue to watch, if that's okay with you, and we can continue to provide these updates. If you have questions, I'm going to ask Mark to step in.
Tom?
Yeah, thanks. I would like to hear Mark's analysis on this.
Well, the thing I want to understand we're doing right now is what are you asking us to do as a committee to inform the council as to what's going on in this area? I'm still not clear what you want us to do today.
We'd like
If you want us to just listen, that's fine with me. We can chat about this stuff, but
we want to
really think we ought to decide if we're going to take some action today.
We would like to keep you appraised of how things are developing and continue this dialogue on this particular bill. If you wish to take a position on it, that, you know, we fully support that, and we have the analysis.
No. Do we report anything out to the council today? Are you recommending that at all?
On this, on 3115, we are not recommending reporting out.
Okay.
Mark, do you want to answer Councillor Anderson's question?
I apologize. When Councillor Anderson was asking his question, his microphone, at least as I heard it, went staticky, so I didn't hear the question.
It wasn't much of a question, Mark.
Yeah.
I just said I'd like to see your comments, hear your comments on this bill. And I'm going to preface that by saying, I understand what's going on as a lawyer, and I may have different personal views as me being a lawyer who's been involved in some of these areas, but we've also got a city to run. And this happened in a lot of the criminal stuff, unfunded mandates that passed.
Do you have were there any specific areas that you
Yeah,
get? Whenever I hear a lawyer ask a lawyer a real general question, I figure my lunch is getting cold. So
well,
what's up?
Chuck, that is true. And whenever you hear a lawyer say a few more questions, you're in trouble.
In trouble.
So, Mark, what I'm interested in the affirmative defense. I'm interested in the standing. I mean, it sure seems to me like it's the broadest standing I've seen. And I'm also interested in the attorney's fees. I mean, all of those things don't sound like they're good for the city's efficient operation of what it needs to do, with the understanding that we are doing what we can for homelessness and on the streets and other things. So that's what
My analysis, and I think it's shared in the legal community, is that when you take those issues together with the issues that Courtney mentioned, there's a lot of vagueness within this, the scope of this bill, and together with the potential for really expansive standing, rights to sue, that this could lead to a lot of litigation, costly litigation, as cities attempt to get the clarification that is not in the bill, the things that Courtney mentioned, and that it, unfortunately, even though it's designed to, in theory, prevent litigation, that is, cities look to get that clarification that's not in the bill, it's going to actually wind up promoting litigation that's going to be very expensive and have a lot of impacts on the city's ability to manage the city effectively. And I don't mean that as in manage the unsheltered population, but just its everyday functioning of the city. Because
You prepared, Mark, to testify then as to those problems if this thing comes up for a hearing? I mean, again, I don't mean to belabor this, but right now what we're trying to do is develop positions. And I hear a position here. I mean, maybe I'm missing something, but that there are a series of problems. And the reason I'm asking is I'm looking at Dan Ryan's letter, and Dan, you know, we love the sort of we're all for the protection of homeless rights, protecting homeless, but he also does go into the unworkable portions. And what I'm looking for is that we're not sitting this one out until it's kind of like, oh God, it's going to pass, and it's going to pass like this. And we're going to try to walk in and say there's problems instead of being part of the discussion. That's what's got me worried. And if we need to go to the council to get the permission, that's what I'd like to have, is some sort of description of what do we take to council. So we have permission to go in and talk about this bill in the real effect it will have on the city. Councilor Hoy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And that was going to be my point, is I don't know why we wouldn't sort of co-sign on Commissioner Ryan's letter and turn Justin loose to try to get those amendments made, because this is going to be, it's going to
be gone.
Right. And it's going to have some real negative impacts if it passes in its current form. If it takes into consideration the things that he outlined in his memo, I don't see a problem with it. And so I don't know why we wouldn't want to just co-sign on that and turn Justin loose to try to make that happen.
Yeah, Tom.
I agree with that, Mr. Mayor. I'm especially like Commissioner Ryan's discussion of narrowing the definition of public property. That's
right.
Something that is really vague.
Well, and there's things, I thought his letter was really good as well, but I thought he didn't go quite far enough on some of it. I think we will have some problems built into this that are going to be more complicating perhaps in our city than in his, but I don't know how to make that judgment. That's what the staff's here for. And I think that's what we need to have kind of drafted up, is here's the legislation, and in line kind of with Ryan's approach. We agree with this broader concept, but there are some real fundamentals in here that we want to alert you to that'll cause us nothing but grief. Because our delegation will at some point say, well, why didn't you tell us? And they'll have voted for it. Yeah, Tom.
Yeah, I move that we oppose this priority 2, and that we have the staff come back with recommendations to support our opposition, along the lines of what we have just discussed.
Let me try another way, okay? Just see what you think of this idea. How about support with amendments? And then we describe the amended process. It's just a different tone.
Yeah, I can understand negative versus positive, so I'm fine with that.
Are you? Okay, I think that would be really helpful. I think Mark's outlining
how we could amend
really.
it.
Yeah, I think Mark's outlining just exactly the kind of issues we're concerned about and could put those in front of us. But we could then let the council know that we're tracking this pretty closely. We'd let our delegation know, but we support these broader concepts. It's just there's some workability issues in here that are really detrimental.
I agree with that.
That be okay?
I wanted to get some discussion going here so
You
we can
bet.
resolve this
Okay,
level, yeah.
good. Well, then we'll do a support with amendments discussion now. Okay, Chris?
I'm just a little bit concerned that on our tracking sheet, that with that note about with amendments might not be readily apparent. And so some people will just read down that list and see the bill number and what's our position. And so right now, if we do the support with amendments, it's going to look like, for the quick reader, it's going to look like we're supporting this bill when we're not. But if we say oppose unless amended, then it's going to make them maybe pay a little bit more attention. That's just my concern. I don't want people to get confused about our position.
Well, maybe we could say support with amendments concerning 1, 2, 3.
What do you need, Justin? What gives you the broadest ability? You're the one that has to explain it.
Support with concerns, and let's go work on those concerns and make sure to share that with our folks. Support with amendments, support with concerns, and we need to, I mean, you guys have obviously the responsibility to see how this impacts your citizens. And again, the concept is there and we want to be supportive of it. We've got to do that work, which Mark is currently doing, to see how it impacts our residents and our citizens. So support with amendments, fine.
Mr. Mayor, I see that Lieutenant Aguilar is here. I wonder if she has any sort of comment on how this might affect.
Yeah, this bill, I think it would, definitely affect us, especially given like you pointed out, the broad definition of public property. So I would support, like what Mark has stated, that we would support portions of this, but certainly we would need to do some work and really hone down what's the intent of the bill, and then how we would be able to work within it. So, we would support the bill, but definitely with some amendments and some better definitions.
Thank you.
Well, how about support with amendments, and we'll leave it to staff to bring us a very clear understanding of the changes we need to have. And then, I hear what you're saying, Chris. I am concerned about that. I'm trying to figure out how we can build that into a positive statement about, like Debbie just did, we support these pieces, but there are these other pieces. Conditional support with amendments. I don't know. What do you think?
I'm happy to say we support it with, as long as it's amended. I'm just concerned that our document doesn't have the capacity to actually articulate that well.
Not real clearly.
I think we have a limited number of options in terms of our position.
Well, I think what we ought to be prepared to do is maybe all of us have been in this discussion, maybe put in a few words on kind of what the problem looks like on the information report when it comes in front of us on Monday, with the ability to call on Mark or Courtney to kind of help us articulate specifically what those problems look like. I think that would be the kind of thing, and that sort of gets it on the record and hands it to Justin on our behalf. I think then it's kind of got our stamp on it. Okay.
Mayor, wouldn't this be normally in the consent calendar? So shouldn't we have to pull it or put it on 5A or do something else in terms of?
I don't know, Courtney, where does it go? Is it information or is it a action item of some kind?
It's usually an action item that gives the council an opportunity to confirm or otherwise acknowledge, approve of the legislative committee's recommended positions.
Why don't we do this? We'll put it on there in that capacity, and Hoy will pull it and make the motion, and we'll get the discussion going then under 5. Okay, great. There we go.
So we will make sure that the summary that's provided indicates the areas that we would recommend for amendments, which are all the areas we've already talked about.
Right,
And Counselor Anderson summarized them great.
yeah,
Defense, the attorney fees, the standing, and then as we started our conversation today, it's around the broad reach and the lack of clarity in the scope as it pertains to what public properties are and the reasonableness standard.
yeah. Yeah, I think that would, Mark,
There's a, if I
would
might,
you be available to Counselor Hoy if he needs more? I mean, he'll get a chance to look at this, or the other counselors need more information to give you a call.
absolutely. That's a conversation I'll also have with
Dan?
Dan as well. I just wanted to make sure we're having a full conversation here. The clarity regarding the potentially very broad reach and areas where there are lack of clarity are the definition of public property, what constitutes reasonableness. It's also what constitutes a person experiencing homelessness. And lastly, what it means to be a law addressing, let me just pull the language out here. What it means to be a law that regulates the act of sitting, lying, sleeping, or keeping warm and dry outdoors. Is it
Right.
literally a law that regulates those things, or is it any law or ordinance that may have a tangential impact on it? For instance,
Yeah,
in our parking garages, that we limit it to being nothing but parking, that now shuts down that space for people who are experiencing homelessness in order to sleep or rest in those areas. But you
Yeah.
can see how regulating parking and making it safe for people utilizing these areas not to hit a pedestrian. I mean,
yeah,
is that a law that tangentially regulating things like that? And Courtney gave some other examples. So there's sort of that lack of clarity as to what it means to be a law regulating it.
and I think having you available to take us down, because those are just the kind of things that would come into a court case or potentially come into a court case. And it's, people may not have thought of the kind of different ways these laws can be interpreted. So that's what you'd be there for, is to take us through some of that stuff. And we would expect you to give us as complete a list of those as you think we need to have. But it's mainly you all's professional judgment as the people who actually have to deal with this stuff for the city to give us some direction here.
Yeah, I'll chat with Mr. Atchison and
Okay.
express to him that it's his desire that, Mr. Mayor, that you want someone there from the legal department to be prepared to have this discussion.
I think so. Don't you, Chris? I mean, yeah, okay. And Tom, don't you agree?
Yes,
Don't you
I
want to
do.
question? Yeah, I thought
Go
ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are three other things, and I think you the first one is standing, and I think standing is what it means to be a homeless person, because if you find as a homeless person or unsheltered, then you can stand it. Second one is attorney fees, and the third one is the affirmative defense. Those are what concern me, as well as the other enumerated. And then, if I could, Mr. Mayor, it seems like this kind of segues into House Bill 2367, which is raises sort of the same issues. So I wonder if Courtney or Justin could talk about that bill, and Mark too, if you.
Before we segue, could I just have a moment to be abundantly clear that we're supporting with amendments? Are we doing this at a staff level, a support two with amendments?
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
We'll draft that and then build a letter based on
Well, yeah,
assuming.
what we need is to get the council to agree to that, is if that's the approach they want to take. I mean, we don't know exactly where the council will be on these issues. Give them a chance to weigh in. and then I draft a letter. The
Understood.
council hasn't talked about this yet.
Understand.
This is our launch on this one.
Thank you so much. So we can move on then to the bill that you just brought up, Councilor Anderson. That's House Bill 2367. And this is the right to rest bill. And Mark, would you like to walk us through this bill?
And it is alive and well.
Hasn't had a hearing yet, Mr. Mayor. And it's not scheduled.
So is it alive and well, or what is it?
Yeah, I think it might be, again, this is me speculating, just like I was griping about, but I'm hearing that and 3124 and others might be wrapped up into some kind of task force bill, which is very common.
Okay,
I agree. 3124 is the same sort of issues, looked at it from a different way. So, we opposed on both of them, and in light of our just completed discussion, maybe we ought to just have that be more of a watch, because if they are consolidating, something else comes out. I'm willing to go with you.
you're fading in and out too.
Oh, sorry.
No,
Okay,
that's okay. It makes me feel good. It's not just me.
Yeah, no, I said in light of our earlier discussions on the bill we just finished,
Yeah,
support with amendments, this is the same area. If it's going to be consolidated and moved together, maybe we just ought to watch it for now and come back with what's happened with the two bills together.
no, package it up with, yeah, Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, and if Justin's speculation turns out to be true, that it's a task force bill, that's fine. We wouldn't need to oppose it then. We're fine
Not
with it
at
going
all.
to task force.
So, sorry, just for clarification, would you like to just move the positions for House Bill 2367 and House Bill 3124 to watch for now and bring them back April 2nd?
Yeah, why don't you put them on the list, bring them to the council. It gives us a chance then. We've put it in front of the council as well, but just put them on as watch. It keeps them well informed and the public as well informed as we can as to kind of what we're thinking. But it also gives us a chance to say that, and hopefully Justin will be at our council meeting to speak on this if need be, that we're really into that portion of the session that's reasonably fluid, and we're trying not to get over our skis on every bill that comes through, because they're going to change. And it doesn't hurt to it gives us a chance to kind of explain what's going on.
Maybe that can even be in part of the information
Yeah,
lead into the report that as of this writing,
right.
these bills remained active, and that could be changing by the time council reviews this report.
It could change by Monday. That's the thing right now. So yeah. Okay.
Okay. Well, if it's okay with you, then we can move on to Senate Bill 395, unless there are any changes to the position that we've drafted.
Yeah, this gets us onto a new topic. I'd kind of clump these a certain way so that we kind of stay in the same, general area of homelessness and sort of behavior and I don't know, whatever else people want to call what's going on here. But they have a feeling of being in the same boathouse. So this one though is different.
Yes. Jason Pulley, do you want to talk about 395?
Sure. We've mentioned this at the last committee meeting briefly, but Senate Bill 395 expands on the bike bill, right? And so really the provisions of this bill require state highway funds moving from 1% dedicated to bike and ped paths to 5% dedicated. But the troubling part for us comes from the trigger, which they're adding resurfacing in as a trigger for expenditures of state highway fund on bike and pedestrian paths. So that's within public works. That's the major concern, because a lot of the work we do is resurfacing, and this could have the potential to add significant costs to simple resurfacing projects. There is provision that says that if the path work is more than 20% of the overall project cost, that it doesn't have to be completed, but it would put a lot of extra work on simple resurfacing. So I haven't, or staff hasn't proposed a position on this, but I wanted to make you aware of, what our concerns were with the bill.
Okay. So you come through and slurry seal my street. What, does that trigger a holdback of 5% or what would this do?
That would, right. So it would require that that project would need some work on adding or enhancing bicycle and pedestrian paths.
Oh, so it wouldn't be you'd take the cost of the project. Say you've got $50,000 in I don't know the scope of a slurry seal, but let's just say $50,000. This would have you hold back $2,500 that would go into a bicycle path, or do you have to buy paint and paint one on the street?
It's either way. The bill is written that if a project to add a path or enhance a path is not viable, but that money would be dedicated to a fund that would go for future work at a different location.
It's sort of like art then. I mean, where we did construction puts X% into.
Correct. It's very similar to us, what we consider with our ADA requirements currently, that once you exceed a certain project cost, the ADA requirements are triggered.
So this asks you to go from 1% to 5%.
Right. And I think, and one of the positions that's being taken is, there's no restrictions on what a local government can do with the state highway fund. If you want to dedicate more than 1%, you certainly can. Requiring this as a mandate, it has its merits, I believe, but at the same time, if we as a city decided that we wanted to dedicate 5% of the state funds to bike and ped paths, we could do that today.
Tom?
Jason, I think you answered my question when you answered the mayor's. The 5% doesn't have to be spent on the resurfacing project you're doing right now. It just has to go to someplace else. For example, it could go toward funding a pedestrian path through a cemetery that the city might own. I'm not suggesting that it should. I'm just saying that's the scope of what we're talking about.
Correct. So all that's required is that the yearly allocation that we receive from the state highway fund, 5% of that would have to be dedicated.
I'm happy
This
with.
bill?
Yeah, I'm. This will come as no surprise, but I would be all in support of this. I would support it with a level 1, and I don't know where it is in the process. And if Justin, if you think we don't have it may not be coming, or it may be coming with amendments or something else, I'm okay with watching. But if you think it's moving through.
But it did receive a public hearing on the 4th. It hasn't.
It's alive.
It's alive. It hasn't been scheduled for a work session yet. The LOC does, at least in my discussions with the LOC, they don't believe that this is going to make it much further than where it has.
It's there, okay. You said it hasn't gotten, and it has to be scheduled for a work session today.
No, it's sitting down in Ways and Means, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, okay.
Joint transportation, so it's allowed.
Oh, who's chairing that sub?
So my suggestion, if we want to support this bill, I would just like to add a caveat that we would like to see resurfacing taken out. So a support, if amended, type of approach would be what I would recommend if you're asking,
Was that you, Jason? I couldn't tell. Chris had his hand up.
No, that was me, Councilor.
That was from you. Yeah, I could go along with that. Support it with out, because I can see how that creates a problem.
Chris?
Yeah, I was going to make the same suggestion that Jason just made, that we suggest an amendment that pulls that out of it and then support it.
To me, the important thing is the 5%, not the details of what the 5% has to be tied into.
Right. The bill would stay exactly the same if resurfacing was taken out. We would still be required to dedicate funds.
Okay. So I'll make another motion just to get this going. I move we amend our position to support 1 with the amendment to take out the resurfacing.
Fine.
That works for you, Jason? You guys will be okay with that?
Yes, sir. That's what we're shooting for.
Okay, everybody okay? Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would also just like to remind everyone that I sent out an email yesterday. We've been requested to support Senate Bill 784 by just including our logo, and this has to do with PGE asked us because it gets to climate energy goals. And so I just wanted to remind you that with no objections, because it fits within our legislative policy statements, we were going to be providing our logo for PGE to use on that letter of support.
Chris?
I have a question about the cost recovery language in it. And when they say, so I'm just, it wasn't clear to me what that means and how much that could impact rates. And why, I mean, so I looked through some of the testimony, and it's interesting to see who's supporting it and who's opposing it. But I couldn't quite tell the answer to my question from the short time I had to look at it. Do we know what kind of rate impact it would be?
Ryan Zink, do you have any input on the rate impact question?
I think that's a great question. And no, I don't have, from what I've read, again, I've only been able to read the bill and I've read through some of the testimony. It doesn't look like there's an impact statement or anything that talks about what that could be. But those rates still have to be approved by the PUC. And so it still goes through their usual rate review process with all those same concerns of, are these reasonable rates? So
Ryan, while you're still there, I also read, I don't know who the person was, where the testimony came from, or whether it's accurate or not, but they were, one testimony that I read was suggesting that the language is already there under the PUC rules, and so they didn't understand. Like they kind of implied that this might be some sort of Trojan horse that isn't necessary. I was just curious about that, if that's.
I am not familiar with that. I'll have to go in and try to read that testimony. I'm sorry, I don't have anything to add to that.
Thank you.
The request is for us to make a decision today, allowing the use of the logo. Are you all comfortable with moving ahead with this? Not so much.
I'm not uncomfortable, but I just still have questions, but it's fine if you guys are for it. Looking at the people who are supporting it, it's a broad group of folks who generally I tend to agree with on most things. So yeah, I'm fine with it.
I also note that Councilor Lewis, when he said he couldn't be here, he said he was in support of adding the logo.
We're still losing you, Tom.
You're probably cutting out, Tom.
Councilor Lewis sent an email saying he was in support of it.
Yeah.
Okay, why don't we go ahead then? I think we're okay. Got a majority.
Okay, thank you very much. There are a couple other bills we're watching as usual, but as we've mentioned today, it's really kind of a crazy time, and so we're going to just continue to watch them. One of them has to do with SECs, another one has to do with insurance, but we're watching everything. And if you want briefings on those other bills, we can give you that, or we can just wait and see when the dust settles what's left and come back on April 2nd.
I think that's a really good advice. I really appreciate you being so adaptable on these homeless bills. I think trying to get to yes on parts of this is really important. So thank you, but without creating some sort of unsolvable legal dilemma. And I'm encouraged that Portland's in the same place. That helps a bit. Yeah, Tom.
I have a public service announcement to make.
Okay.
Headphones do not work if you don't plug them into your computer. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why I was
okay. Because you can plug them in the wrong hole and just get nothing.
Yeah. Okay. But I'm connected now.
Okay.
If I was capable of being embarrassed, I'd be embarrassed.
Would you give Jessica my thanks for following through with my request?
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like us to?
No, if you would like, I could just give you kind of a score sheet of what I think is happening next.
Great.
I think we're taking forward 4 bills about increasing funding or awareness to behavioral health and addiction recovery services. including House Bill 2086, Senate Bill 680, Senate Bill 67, Senate Bill 69. We're taking forward 3 bills as it relates to homelessness and enforcement and storage, which is House Bill 3115 with a support 2, including amendments, and we'll have a more detailed list of those amendments. We're taking forward House Bill 2367 and House Bill 3124, and those are going to be listed as a watch because we are sensitive to so much could change. And then we're taking forward Senate Bill 395 with a support with amendments to just get around the resurfacing part.
Yeah.
And then we're okay using the logo in support of Senate Bill 784.
Yeah.
And when we draft the memo that goes on for Monday night, it'll just reference how crazy things are and that we'll come back with more sense of what's moving forward on April 2nd to the Legislative Committee.
Great. I thought these short staff reports were really good. I thought those were really helpful to be able to get a quick look inside these bills. So I think those are just great. And to the extent that those can be reused, they're really very good. Very, very helpful.
Thank you for the feedback. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, staff.
Bye. We'll see you all Monday.